Hello, everybody. My name is Roopa, and I'm here live from Edmonton, Alberta, which is located up north in Canada. Very, very cold place compared to possibly where most of you are logging in from today. Originally from Bangalore, India, and grew up there, studied a little bit in Bombay as well, and then moved to the US in Boston, and then moved to Canada. So, a very quick background about myself. I've been working with people who are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder for close to 20 years right now. The youngest people that I see are as young as 2 to 3 years old, and my older clients are anywhere in the range of 18 to 65 years old. So, a big chunk of work that I do currently is I work largely with a lot of adults who are struggling with school or college, university, but also that transition into workplace. And that's why I thought it's important to have this very candid talk about what are the struggles for people who are diagnosed with autism and what are those struggles as they're transitioning into employment. So, to begin with, when I think about autism, as most of you are aware, you're thinking about the challenges with social communication. There's a sense of sensory needs, which is lighting, could be taste, smell, many things like that. And they like routines. A lot of them like structure, which means keep it predictable, keep it simple. That's a kind of a summary of what autism is. But how does this impact workplace or people who are getting employed? So when I think about a lot of experiences that I hear in therapy or working with people in different organizations, one of the big thing when you think about job is your first process is to attend an interview. Everything starts off with an interview, and that's where a lot of barriers start from. So when you think about an interview is a very social process, whether it's an interview to work at a bookstore, whether it's an interview to work at an IT company or working as a teacher, any profession. Just like all of us, people on the spectrum will, join any professions. There's nothing like everybody is a mathematician or everybody is going to be a scientist or everybody is going to be a historian, right? But that interview process, to be honest, is where the problem starts with. Because when you think about a traditional interview, it is a very social process. One, you sit in front of somebody. It could be a panel of people, it could be just one person interviewing you. And the stories that I hear is that interview process is a horrific, daunting experience for people who are diagnosed with autism. And this has no connection to how intelligent they are. They could be an absolute expertise in an economic theory or do really well as a janitor. It doesn't matter what the level of employment is. But that process of meeting somebody, facing somebody, and talking to them about what are my skills? Tell me about yourself. Why do you want this job? Talk to me about your strengths. Talk to me about what are the challenges you think you would encounter in this job. Very classic interview questions. It can be very, very difficult. So that I would think is one of the first barrier for people entering mainstream employment. It is not built for a neurodiverse population. It is built for what we call a neurotypical population, which means people whose brains are wired in a manner to just attend an interview, socially connect, talk, not feel nervous or anxious being in that setting. We've got it. We just do it. But that's not the case for a lot of people on the spectrum. And the stories that I have heard, if I can be very honest about what people tell me is, Rupa, my palms start sweating. I feel like vomiting before going to the interview. My whole body starts feeling very weird. What in the world of psychology I would call a classic experience of anxiety. So even though I work very closely with many people where I prep them for an interview, I tell them, okay, what can we do? Can we take 10 deep breaths before the interview? These are the kind of questions. Let's follow a script. We practice, we rehearse the script, we do everything. But at the end of the day, to go and face an interview and process those questions, um, and answer everything, it's a lot of work. An example I can think of is one of the guys said, Rupa, I remembered everything when I went to the interview. I went, and then there was a white wall behind the guy that was interviewing him. He said the white wall kept reflecting a light that kept bothering me. And that distracted me so much that I could not answer any question. And mind you, what I'm narrating right now is actually a quote from somebody who has a PhD in a subject, remarkably intelligent guy. But just the reflection of the white light from the wall, the way it was radiating, and the light in the room, which was very bright, or what we would call a fluorescent lighting, was enough for him not to make it to the interview or not to answer these questions. And of course, the employer is going to reject this candidate, right? So this is often what happens as step one when I think of challenges with employment, right from the coming out with your resume, you post it, they can take some help. That's also not the most easiest thing. But then the interview is a big barrier. Now, let's say with some people, they make it past the interview and they secure a job. Um, where difficulties arise, guys, is I think of, when I'm at a job, having worked several jobs. I worked at a hospital, I worked for an organization, I worked for an organization that runs group homes. So you're working with colleagues, you're working with employees. And where the difficulty lies is office politics, understanding unwritten social codes in an office. So this would be small talk. Hey, Rupa, how was your week? Yeah, it's quite easy. I can just say, yeah, I had a good week. I um, went out with my family, went on a small vacation on a weekend. Very easy for many people to have a small talk, which is extremely common in everyday office scenarios and organizations. That is extremely difficult for people with autism. And now, mind you, when I say difficult, it's not that they cannot do it. Even if they do it on an average with a lot of difficulty. And this is where some people talk to me about words that we use called camouflaging, masking, where you try to put on a mask and then try to engage in the social chit chat, because they also know that if I don't engage, I'm not going to have a sense of belonging in this office, right? Because everybody is looking for a sense of belonging, whether you have autism or whether you don't have autism. So that's something that I hear very commonly in therapy, guys, is, Rupa, it's so hard for me to understand office politics. If I don't participate in office gossip, then I'm not included anywhere. I don't understand what's going on. It's really hard for me to get into different social networks within the office. I'm not accepted. Some sad things that I hear in therapy, which breaks my heart, is people call me quirky, weirdo, that crazy girl, that odd guy. And they start really developing this sense of massive rejection. They feel I'm ostracized. People talk about how if this is an ecosystem in the office, I feel like I belong somewhere in the end of the ecosystem, which means I'm not included. Or when they're included, it's also hard because navigating all these different social parties and office politics and gossip is something that is remarkably challenging for people with autism, or they do it with utmost distress. This is where I often hear people who come back home And they talk about, Rupa, at the end of a workday at 5:30 when I come home, I am done. And this is what I would call burnout. This is where they feel so burnt out because if you think about being in an office, you're processing social communication. Sudden spontaneous thing like, hey, can you get this quick project done for me? Can you send this email? Which means I'm working on something. I have to stop doing that, suspend it, shift my attention to something else, and then come back and work on what I had to do. So it becomes remarkably difficult for people to just like disengage and engage again, right? So this is very, very difficult. People often say, I'm hyper focused when I'm working. This is not just focus, but I want you guys to pay attention to the word hyper focus. So they're really into what they're doing with their work. But because of the way we all work, cubicles or different types of job scenarios, somebody will just come and be like, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to get out for a coffee really quick? There is a interruption in my ability to focus on what I'm doing. But I also want to people please because if I don't engage, then I'm considered a weirdo or a crazy person. So I try and stop doing what I'm doing and then I go and have coffee with somebody, but it's not easy. Again, what we see at face value is not what they're experiencing internally, which is a lot of anxiety, stress, and everything, right? So, some of the most common things, kind of to summarize a lot of what I was talking, that people with autism experience in typical workplace scenarios are the way the organization is set up, like linear organization, cubicles, no private space, everybody's in each other's space, lots of social chit chat. So think about it. They go to work, they have to talk to everybody, they have to process the lighting in the office, which may be hurting their eye. There's a lot of, things that I hear is, Rupa, the phone is ringing in the background. I can hear the computer keyboard typing. People actually tell me I can't even go out and eat lunch with everybody because the sound of people chewing bothers me. So again, when we think of people eating lunch in an office setting, we're thinking about chewing, smells, different foods, and different social chit chat. Very, very difficult. They can do it, not on a routine basis, though, right? So, this is where people experience distress, anxiety, turmoil, and but again, if they don't show up for lunch, it's considered like, oh, why didn't she show up? And then they don't get any more invitations. So it's like a catch 22. What do? I want to respect my needs, but if I don't go, I don't have a sense of belonging and I get looked down upon. It's these nuances to navigate become really challenging. The other thing that I can think about, which I often hear, is be a team player. So if you think about many organizations and employment, the way that's set up is group project. Go figure this out with your group. Attend the board meeting, troubleshoot, brainstorm. Let's all do this together. So if you think about what I'm talking, a common pattern that I'm identifying here is team player, group, meeting, boardroom. They're all group-based behaviors, which also means we are expected to be social. I may be talking about for example, this may be a technical project that I'm on, IT related, for example. So I'm really good at what I do, but I just don't know how to communicate that in a group setting, in a boardroom. Many people talking, everybody shooting ideas together, people making a joke, laughing. I don't know how to read unwritten social rules. Is that a joke? Was that sarcastic? I'm already working very hard in my head to process all that. When is it my turn to talk? But I want to talk. I have an idea, but I feel anxious to talk in front of 7 other people in the group. What am I supposed to do? How do I navigate this conversation with 5 to 6 other people in this group. Again, challenging. If this makes any sense to any of you, one of my clients with autism made a very powerful comment. And he said, Rupa, the world of autism works like a train, and the world of neurotypicals, they operate like a car. And I said, oh, what do you mean? Can you help me understand this better? And he said, when I wake up, I like my day to be very structured, organized, and like a train, which means I first do this, and then I wake up, I go, I have a structure, I follow the same structure every day. There's a sense of predictability, no surprises, no deviation from that structure, and I'm good. I'm pretty good if I can follow this. Whereas if you think about it, an office atmosphere, it operates like a train. It operates more like a car, which means you change lanes when required, you yield, you stop, you make a U-turn when required, which basically means you've got to be very flexible. A typical office workplace is designed for our brains to be very flexible, which means I go with the flow. Hey, would you mind taking up this project? Yeah, sure. Hey, let's go out for lunch. Okay, let me understand office politics, because if I don't go out for lunch, I may not get that promotion. So we are constantly using our social smarts to navigate the office like a car. We know what to do when, and that's not the way people on the spectrum operate. They're very direct, simple, and these unwritten social codes and aspects become very confusing and stressful for them, and often leading to exhaustion, burnout, shutdown, just this ability to even function. I have all these skills, but I'm finding it really hard. So I see a question that's popping in here. Somebody is asking, I think Kajal is asking, what role, I'm just going to read that out really quick. What role does workplace culture play in creating challenges for neurodiverse employees, and how can organizations foster an inclusive culture? So perfect question, Kajal. That's kind of what I was going to segue in the last 10 minutes, was to talk about what can we do to foster the sense of accommodation. Everything that I spoke about right now is workplace culture, Kajal, on an average. I'm not saying it's 100%, but workplace culture is not set up to honor the diverse needs of people with autism or neurodiversity. That could be ADHD, autism, dyslexia. These are the three things that are grouped under neurodiversity. I think one is just accept people for who they are. It is okay to have certain accommodations. Does that mean more work from home? It's okay. If it's a job that can be done from home, it's all right to get it done. Also, having that sense of what I have done previously is I've gone to organizations and I've spoken to people about what is neurodiversity, what are some of the challenges they present, but more than the challenges, I highlight on what are the strengths they possess. And let's celebrate the strengths instead of constantly saying, oh, they find it difficult to chit chat, they find it difficult to be a team player, right? If they're able to contribute those ideas to chats, through emails, through written communication, if they like structure, let's provide the structure instead of changing routines, changing structure, keeping things very organized, structured, giving them the space, maybe altering the lighting of the organization, or things that I have done, for example, is somebody who has to go to work, cannot work from home. Can we change the location of where they sit? This lady used to sit right in the middle of a big organization. So through some employment accommodations, we gave her a space in the corner where her back is facing all the social stimulation. So she has the ability to just filter out all that and focus on her work. And we created a sense of barrier for her, altered the lighting, altered the temperature, gave her some tools to, what can I do to decompress? Can I take more frequent breaks compared to others? If I have to attend a boardroom meeting, can I take frequent breaks? Can people wear noise cancellation headphones? Lots of stimulation, sounds. Um, it's a busy environment. We don't think about it because a lot of us just accommodate to it naturally. Our brain doesn't hurt. Can we take noise cancellation headphones, right? So there are ways where we can make those safe environmental adaptations to give them a sense of belonging, that it's okay. If somebody says, no, I don't want to come for lunch, it's all right to do that. One way to answer your question, Kajal, how can we foster a more inclusive culture, is many times a lot of things that are discussed is done verbally. That is just like what I'm doing with you guys talking. And when several instructions are provided verbally to many of the folks that are diagnosed with autism or neurodiverse, it's not that they don't understand. But again, when I'm thinking about social communication, I'm trying to filter out background noise, I'm trying to focus. So I may not process everything that is being told. And then I'm being told that, oh, why didn't Rupa understand this? I already spoke to you. I told you all this. Same thing, can you translate that to simple, concrete written communication? Can this be done through a memo? Can this be done through an email, Teams chat, whatever? But keeping things concrete and simple is really helpful as an accommodation to make it more inclusive for people on the spectrum. I think that educational piece for colleagues to help others understand, why is Rupa different? Why is John different? Or why is somebody different, is also extremely helpful to make it an inclusive atmosphere. And, really celebrate those trends. We're constantly chasing deficits. We're constantly chasing what a person cannot do. But I would change that narrative to, what can we do to celebrate somebody's strengths, their needs? And there are several ways to do it, right? If, if there is somebody that's complaining that, oh, I don't like my office chair, my back hurts, it makes sense to us. We say, oh, John's back is hurting, so we could get him a different chair so his back doesn't hurt. We make accommodations. If somebody is injured and they're in a wheelchair, what is the accommodation we make? We build a ramp to say, hey, how do we wheel this person to come such that he or she can work? That's an accommodation. But what we don't recognize is mental health needs. It's not as visible as a wheelchair. It's not as visible as back pain or somebody in crutches or somebody in a sling because they broke their arm. It's visible. We all say, oh, poor thing, let's open the door for this guy because he needs an accommodation, right? But we don't think about it because this is invisible. So there's a question from Hiril Gandhi. What are some of the most common challenges that individuals with autism face in traditional workplace setting? So Hiril, this is kind of what I was talking in the beginning of today's session, is the biggest barrier, I think, it starts from the interview process. How do I even get past the interview? How do I socially communicate with my colleagues? Sudden changes in organization structure, spontaneous things, lots of sudden changes, very difficult for people with autism. And I think these are largely social barriers, sensory barriers. I think the need for structure and routine, barriers in that, spontaneous activities, asking somebody to do something without any prior warning or notification. Again, let's all go out for lunch. Come on, Rupa, join us for lunch. I don't want to. I just feel very anxious during such times. So I think traditional workplace here is set up for neurotypical people. That's the reality. A traditional workplace is not set up to accommodate neurodiverse individuals. And I think that by itself, at a very high level, is the biggest barrier for people who are neurodiverse. It could be autism, ADHD. Some people are diagnosed with both. And it is extremely difficult. I just met somebody day before who was saying that, as I'm on my computer and as I start typing, the person next to me in the cubicle eats popcorn and chips. And the sound of the other person eating popcorn and chips drives her up the wall. She's not angry with the person. She understands that they need to eat and it's okay, but it's very hard to process. And when I wrote a letter to the organization to make accommodations, I basically received an email saying, oh, headphones are not allowed. It's against the organizational policies. Why? How does it matter? Like, she's not doing a job that would prevent her from anything if she wore headphones, but they will not allow. And that, to answer your question, is a traditional workplace setting with policies and procedures that are not written and meant to accommodate people who are neurodiverse. And it's extremely unfortunate, right? And she's not allowed to wear headphones, but she has to constantly process all these different uh, sensory atmospheres and social and everything, and yet focus on the work, be productive. What about productivity? What about deadlines? They want you to do everything. And that's, in my humble opinion, it's a very unfair expectation for somebody's brain that's just wired very differently. I don't think it's wired wrongly, it's wired differently, and they can do way better if there's certain accommodations that are provided in workplaces. It is really stressful. I hear the stories that I hear about the challenges that people go through every day. It's painful. It's a very painful experience for many people. It's tough. We live in a very social world. We are expected to be socially smart, and at the cost of that talent, um, capacity that people have is sometimes overlooked because the ability to navigate these nuances are not there, right? So, uh, how can we overcome it? Lots, it has to be customized. I don't think I have a cookie cutter answer because it depends on the organization, it depends on the nature of the job, what are the job roles and expectations. So, lots of factors to consider. But the key is to work with the individual and the needs of the organization. And where can we have a happy medium where work is performed, but with certain accommodations? The accommodations could be environmental, the accommodations could be, is it work from home? Accommodation could be through all communication, can we make it written communication so it's black and white and no room for any confusion? So that's, I think, Hiral, the best way I can answer your question is, at the end of the day, it has to be individualized to the person and individualized to the nature of the workplace somebody's working with. So just to leave you guys, it's we're about a minute or two before I'm going to wind up here. I think of neurodiversity as a different way of life. We are all diverse. If I'm a very social person, nobody's going to tell me, Roopa, become an introverted, because I can't be. Similarly, I think if we can honor, celebrate each other's needs, we're in a much better place to live in compared to asking people to change to fit into a box. We do not want to put a square peg in a round hole, right? If I had a team of 20 girls at some point and I wanted to give them t-shirts because something to be a team player. If I ordered medium-sized t-shirt for everybody, is it going to fit them? It's not, because one size does not fit all. And then I usually say, hey, what is your size? What is your color preference? Blah, blah, blah. And then I honor the needs of people, their body size or color preferences, etc. Right? I think it's the same concept. One size is not going to fit all. Similarly, all our brains are not going to work the same way, and that's okay. We do not need people to fit into this traditional workplace setting. In fact, the traditional workplace setting has to reconfigure and say, what can we do to accommodate neurodiverse needs, just like how we accommodate our needs. I think that's a much honorable, safer place to start this journey. Is what I would hope for in this world, to make it a better place for everybody, because everybody deserves a sense of identity. Everybody deserves a sense of belonging, whether it's at work, whether it's at school, whether it's at university, it doesn't matter. I feel like I deserve it, and I'm sure many people deserve that too. So hoping for a better tomorrow. And if there's any question, I'm happy to answer it. Well, it was nice to chat with everybody, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. I'm sure the organization is going to share my social media contacts. I'm happy to get in touch with anybody and help and be of any assistance if it's within my ability. So thank you, everybody.